first and foremost, thank you for doing this conversation. It is Black Maternal Health Week this week, and this is an important week for our community just to bring awareness and advocacy for Black women and Black birthing individuals and reproductive care. And so you and I connected online, and your brand and your business and everything you do is surrounded around Black women and mothers. So I'm
And
like,
Black mothers.
who better to come and have this first conversation with? So thank you for joining me. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us like a little bit about what you do and who you work with?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm Barbara Neal. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm the founder and owner of Therapy for Black Moms, a teletherapy practice here in New Jersey. We have clinicians that are licensed in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania, and a few other places. And we really pride ourselves in supporting the mental and relational health of Black mothers from pregnancy to empty nest and everything in between, really providing a really culturally affirming space for moms so they can gain the tools that they need to advocate for themselves, to take better care of themselves, and to help them manage and cope with the stressors of motherhood and life. And really, one of the themes of Black Maternal Health Week is joy. Really, an important part of our work is really helping moms define and redefine themselves as mothers, partners, and individuals so that they can also experience joy and not just survive motherhood, but really get through it and thrive.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I love the mission behind the work that you do, and bringing up joy is such a really great point to just start with,
Mm-hmm.
because we hear so much when we talk about Black maternal mental health, and this is important, the numbers and the stats, right? But also to talk about the joy and
Yes.
how much that is a part of our story and our narrative, and the strength for how we still show up for each other in the village.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for kind of like bringing that up. What made you decide to center your practice and your business on Black motherhood?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of my good friends, she was the founder of a Facebook group called the Mommy Grind. And within that group, a lot of the challenges started to become like mental health challenges as time was
Mhm.
going on. And she reached out to me when I was like finishing up my license, and she was saying, hey, I would love for you. I want to work with some moms and do different things. And I hadn't really thought about what my focus of my practice would be, but when she came to me with that idea of sponsoring moms for therapy, kind of eliminating some of the red tape so they could get the support that they need, it just felt really like this is it.
Mm.
This is who I need to work with. And if you're going to do this work long term, you want to do it with the demographic. It's already hard work. And
Yeah.
I love Black women already. And I love mothers. And so why not create a space where I feel comfortable as a clinician being my authentic self, and then I can support people that I really love and care about. And so while it is mothers, we see Black women, there are some people that come to us that are not Black, but being able to focus and center on Black moms, there are not very many spaces that are specifically say, hey, this is where you're welcome. And so that just felt really natural, and I've loved it from day
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, and you kind of hit on, the topic for what we're talking about today, and the spaces
Mhm.
that look like us and speak the language of our community, and how important that is for us to have those shared spaces. So can you tell me a little bit about what you were noticing, right, in that group, and even right now in this climate with the mothers that you're seeing, like what are you noticing as some of the biggest challenges related to mental health and motherhood?
Yeah, one of the things I think post COVID and just kind of how the way in which we live is a lot of isolation. I think, motherhood was never designed for us to be doing it alone. And there are a lot of moms who are not around their immediate family. They might not have had quite developed their chosen family of like close friends and things near them. And so they're doing motherhood in isolation, being really hard on themselves, not really having someone to bounce ideas off of. And that is, amplifying depressive and anxious anxiety symptoms in during the postpartum period where they're already changing so much as a person. Um, and from their individual state, their body's changing. Now you're a mom, you have all these different things. And so it's a lot of changes at once, and not having anybody to talk to, not having trusted community, possibly having traumatic birthing experiences or difficult pregnancies, miscarriages, without having someone to really process those things with. I feel like sometimes providers are just doing, like, patching them up and they're going without digging deeper or getting curious. And so that is one of the things that I've seen that is just really negatively impacted the mental health of mothers. And so um, that's one of the things that I think is really important about my work. Is the therapy room is one space, but also connecting moms to other moms, to community resources for support and care, because I think isolation is
Mhm.
really, really making motherhood a challenge today,
Mhm.
for sure, on our mental
Mhm.
health.
Yeah, yes, like that is so true. When you think about like motherhood in general, like doing it alone, like
Mhm.
that's hard enough, but not having mom friends, right? Like that's
Mhm.
so significant. I think there's so much shared care, there's so much shared just universality about motherhood and like what's going on between you and your life and and other moms. And so I think community is so important, but I think unfortunately there has been this like shift in dynamic in society where we have become more isolated, right? Like you
Yeah.
know, talk about COVID, right? Where families were separated, and we're thinking about how do we build that community back together. And
Mhm.
in your work, a large part of what you do, like you said, is about community, right? It is
Mhm.
about connecting. Can you talk a little bit about the ways in which you're doing that, right? Like how is that tangibly showing up for your moms, and what have they said that that has been like for them?
Yeah, I think one of the things when I think of self-care, finding community is a big part of that. And I think the feet, once they get out and try it, they're all really happy with the results. So for example, um, whether it's organizations. So I used to do nonprofit work in Newark, New Jersey. And so I developed a lot of really strong relationships with folks. And so the perinatal health equity um, initiative, that foundation is an organization that I work with a lot. They do, like, they have doulas, they have lactation consultants, they have they used to have a breastfeeding class, a lot of different things, but people may or may not know about them, right? And so letting my clients know and become aware, the community that I have a lot online, even aware of what's available, so they can connect with other people. And then, like I said, once I get them over the initial hump to go, it's always really transformative. And then even social things. And so I think about the Black Girl Walking Club. They post a calendar every month. I reshare it. Anybody I can tell about it, I'm like, listen, if you want to go try walking, if you want to go try sculpting some clay, like, step outside of motherhood for a second and just be yourself, finding that space. And then for the moms who really, maybe for whatever reason they can't get childcare, can't go outside, really finding supportive online communities. And there are a lot of different ones that the moms engage in, finding like-minded moms who are, obviously committed and dedicated to our children, but
Right.
also really invested in being well ourselves. And
Mhm.
so I think the feedback is, this is what we need.
Mhm.
How do I find it? And where
Yeah.
where are my people now, and who are they?
Yeah, yeah, like where are my people? It's about finding community. I feel like now more so than ever, it's really about actively seeking that on our own, right? If you don't
Mhm.
have the village, building that village around you, right? It doesn't always have to be family, right? It can look like your neighbor who, can do a meal train with you right after,
Yes.
you give birth, and that community can be built and curated, and
Mhm.
cultivated. And so, I love that you're like bringing that in resources, whether it's online or in person and showing up. And then another thing that really like stuck to me with what you said is this piece around identity, right?
Mhm.
Mothers are coming in to the sessions, but a motherhood is just one part of who they are. And a lot of times they're coming in with this is their being their whole identity, right?
Yeah.
And so how are you working with moms and kind of untangling, right? Like their identity from the
Yeah.
motherhood title and the motherhood role.
Yeah, yeah. Just, this is where that licensed marriage and family therapist, that relational approach comes in because,
Mm-hmm.
we're so many different things. And I think, for a long time, our mothers, our grandmothers, just the way motherhood was framed to us, it's like once you become a mother, like that is it.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything. If you do anything outside of that, like what are you doing? And so really opening the idea that you can care about your children, you can care about your partner, you can care about your work, but you can also care about yourself too.
That part.
And if you take all of those things away, what do you like? What do
Mm.
you enjoy? And you would be surprised how many Black women are never asked those questions.
Right.
What do you like to do for fun? That's not scrolling. Or, when is the last time you tried something new? Just asking new questions that make them not think of anyone else, because we're always thinking of everyone else. And so I think that is a big part of the work. And then, once you get a mom thinking about themselves, letting them know, reminding them that it doesn't mean you don't care about anybody else. Just because you don't do everything. We Black women are so amazing. We can do any and everything. But
Mm-hmm.
my big part of my work is like, but you don't have to do everything.
Right. Right.
Somebody else can do some things
Yeah.
can wait. But if you take really good care of yourself, then when you go to, I always use myself as an example. If I'm taking really good care of myself, when I do go to my son's soccer games, I'm going to be happy to be there. I'm not going to be tired. I'm going to be there, be able to be engaged because I did the other things. I went to my book club and I had a good time with them. Really kind of managing people's expectations that no, I'm not going to be able to do every single thing all the time. Sometimes my thing may conflict with your thing, and that's okay. We'll do something else. And so, really, just this idea that motherhood isn't all consuming, you're still a person.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think initially, I want to get back to who I was before. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who that is, but we have to figure out who we are now because even your body, your physical makeup is so different once you have a child. And so just
Mm-hmm.
kind of but how often, because of the society that we live in, do we get to just think about, who we are? We don't just get to sit and dream. And
Yeah.
so that's one of the things I try to do in the therapeutic space is really just, yes, I love and care about all these other people. We don't love our children any less because we want to have fun too, and that seeing that as contributing to all these other things is such an
Yeah.
important part of the work.
Yeah. Yeah. And you like everything you said. I'm like, yes, in the background, I'm like plus plus plus. I wholeheartedly agree. I think the idea of getting back is so like normalized, and
Mhm.
I feel like it has mothers in a chokehold, right? And it's
Mhm.
like we don't need to get back. We need to sit in the here and now, and we need to be in the present and figure out who we are going forward,
Yeah.
because you are not the same. And
Mhm.
so I think like explaining that is a part of the process. And we hear a lot about like culturally affirming care, or culturally responsive, trauma informed, a lot of these words that are thrown out that we're seeing on the TikToks and the Instagrams and things like that. But what does culturally affirming care actually look like in the room with a Black mom who is dealing with racial trauma and politics and society, and bringing that into the room?
Yeah, I think it looks like in practice being honest and talking about the really hard parts of the lived experiences of Black women and just Black people
Hmm.
in our society. Like, I think that, you know, we cannot talk about any of these things in isolation. And so I think like being open to, yeah, there are parts that are really challenging. There are a lot of ghetto things going on in the world right now. Like we have to make space for those things. We can't just isolate. We also have to make space for, when I think of culturally affirming care, sometimes the issue is people just don't have enough money. And like
Hmm.
that is okay to say. There are a lot of problems that money can solve, right? And so I
Yes.
think being honest, and then I also think about being flexible, giving moms the opportunity to show up really authentically as themselves, whether that is, if you got to come to the session and take your braids down, I'm here for it. I'm glad that you're here.
Hmm.
Me coming in authentic as well. Like I'm not the I'm not going to have my button up on. I might have a sweater on today or different
Mhm.
things, but really just being who we are as Black women. There's so many things that, you know, we don't have to explain to each other that we
Right.
know. You know, we can always
Hmm.
get clarity and get curious, but for them, it just bring. I think that that is so important, and I
Yeah.
don't know that I could describe that, but I'm sure you know what it is
Yeah.
when you
I
walk
know what.
into a room and
Yeah.
it just feel like giving them that feeling where they can be extended grace. They know
Hmm.
you're going to be curious.
Right.
And even though we're going to push them, I'm going to push them to grow in love because I
Right.
want them to have the life that they want that does include all of these really hard things, but also hope and joy and teaching them that they can learn new things and see things a different way, and really just try different things. And so when I think about culturally affirming care, that's what I think about. And I also think, too, for us, you know, we're a communal people. I think that, you know, with Instagram and TikTok, you know, people want to know people. And so I think
Mhm.
building authentic relationships is like a really, really important piece of that. And I think, you know, we don't have to you don't need to be telling all your business and dumping all those things, but I think it is important that, you know, my all my moms know I don't like sports. I have a son. Like, I'm struggling with that. Like, I
Right.
don't want to go. I if my book club and the game is on the same day, like, I'm going to book club. And so I think just being able to be relatable and not
Hmm.
so far removed from, you know, I live in this country too, you know. And
Yeah.
so making space for bringing my authentic self, I think, is also really important to the culturally affirming piece.
Yeah.
How have you seen that in your work with women, or just in your work
No.
period?
Exactly what you were saying. And actually, this actually brought up just like a little story from earlier this week, when I had a client. She was like, I don't got to explain it to you. You know what I mean. You get what I'm saying. Like, those were
Mm-hmm.
her words, and I didn't have, you know what I mean. I didn't have to explain, or, she didn't have to go into detail about what it meant that she was trying to say, because I just get it. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
that is not found in other spaces. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that the more that we also create the spaces, but also in the room, reduce the shame around
Yes.
speaking up around about these issues, right? Like you were talking about, finances and access being a real problem, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and being okay to even say that, right? Like, I've had clients not want to talk about how they got laid off and how that's impacting their income and their savings, is, you know what I mean? Like, people are so fearful, but that's placed on us by society's pressure, which is which is, we know, informed by white supremacy practices, right? So,
Yeah.
right, you know what I mean? And so it all kind of like, for me, kind of like goes back to that. And like, in my room, it's like, how do I create space for you to be safe, to show
Mm-hmm.
up, like you said, as authentically as you can, cursing, bonnet, eating, whatever it is, for you to feel
Yes.
safe, because the society's already asking us to show up as
Yes.
someone else the moment we walk out the door.
Mm-hmm.
And in this space, like, culturally affirming care is letting you just be you. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. That is such a, so that reminds me too of when I think about culturally affirming care is making it safe again for moms to just tell the truth. So often women aren't talking about how depressed they are or how they're not sleeping at night because they're checking to see if their baby's breathing 10, 20 times, or they're just like really depressed and it's like, you know what, I don't really like this kid. I'm happy to be a mom, but I don't. And so making that safe to where they're not worried that, you know, you're going to call the people on them or whatever. It's
Hmm.
like, no, I need to know those things so I can know the support and help that you need. And also that is a normative part of the experience. There's nothing that we're going to like 100% of the time. And
Right.
again, just because you're feeling a particular way now, it doesn't mean it's going to be that way for forever. You know, you may be really depressed. We have postpartum depression. Maybe you don't have support. You know,
Hmm.
maybe you
Hmm.
need to get a house cleaner. Maybe you need to order some dinner or do some things to make your life easier. And so I think just creating that space where moms can just tell the truth without fear of, like you said, being judged or that, you know, you're going to take their kids from them, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. That's a real fear. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that, like, what we're doing right now, naming it, right,
Yeah.
and giving spaces exactly what we do in our sessions. One of the things that you said that kind of brought me right to the next question that I have for you, which is about rebuilding the village, right? We know
Mm.
how important support and community and collective care is, for the mental health of moms. But if you could build a village from scratch, right? Like you could build your little Wakanda village. What would be in the village and what would it include?
Yeah, yeah. So I've been thinking about this a lot. And my first response, money. The mamas need money. Okay.
Period.
The mamas need money so they can just do things to make their lives easier. So if I think about a village, and I actually have thought about this, like if it was like a strip mall, it would have like a hair salon, it would have a spa, it would have a therapy office, it would have like a coffee shop, just some places where obviously a place for the kids, like they could have their own little room so we could just drop them off, but just a place where moms can not come and not have to make any decisions. They could just sit and dream. If they want to read, they could read. If they want to draw, whatever they want to do, anything, a track, they want to walk around, like it would just have things where we could just let the outside world be there for a minute, but reconnect with ourselves and reconnect with other women, other mothers, other people, other sister friends, the
Yeah.
aunties, everybody. We can just kind of care for each other, and so those are some of the things that I was thinking of when I thought about that too. um and also just an opportunity to try new things. We don't
Hmm.
try things anymore. We want
Right.
everything to be perfect, but I'm like, if you want to try to learn Spanish, if you want to try to play the piano, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you can just try it, you know?
Right.
And so often our creativity gets stifled because we're too busy to think about anything, number one.
Hmm.
But, we need that space.
Right.
I'm really I like puzzling and like, I don't know if you have any Be Rooted stationery, but I love those
Oh,
puzzles
yes,
and
yes.
everything. Like, turn on an audiobook and puzzle or just sit, you
Right.
know?
Right.
So,
Yes. Yes. I love that. I love that you kind of ended on joy and centering on something that is solely for the mother, right? Like
mhm.
I think about me last year. I went on YouTube and taught myself how to like do canvas painting. I was like, I'm bored. Like I need to find
Yes.
something that I enjoy again that has nothing to do with maternal mental health or motherhood or taking my daughter somewhere. And I'm like, I just want to paint, do something with my hands, and I found out that I'm actually kind of good at it. So I'm like, okay, let me put my art on the wall, and I
Yes.
just feel proud of that. And I think, again, it gets lost like in this
Mhm.
cloud. I think, one of the things that stood out for me, like if I was building my village, is I think that like a lot of our care is so siloed, right? I
Mhm.
just came back from a trip to Ghana, and of their care is very collective, right? Like in the
Mhm.
village, like
Mhm.
by village meaning like within the community, right? So I'm thinking, we have all these spaces, but like your OBGYN is like right there, and like
Yes.
your psychiatrist is over there. The pharmacy is run by Black women. I think
Mhm.
about the Barbie movie, right?
Yeah.
And how it's all the Barbies running all the jobs, but it's like it's centered on mothers and our care, and it's you can leave your kid in the street and someone's gonna take care of it.
Yeah.
We've
That's why I
lost.
said the strip mall that just has
Right.
everything that is just black. Like
Right.
it's just a different experience. I remember was it last year, maybe the year before, I had fibroid surgery. My OB, she is a black woman. Girl, the nurse was black. The person doing the anesthesia was black. I was just like, huh, they were all black women. And I was just
Hmm.
like, oh, this is going to be lovely. And it's
Yes.
just so, like, just so nice. And you feel like they're going to have my back.
Right. Right.
They're going to
Yeah.
have my back. And I think that's why we'll have our strip mall with all these different things.
Hmm.
And, someone can see you painting and being like, you know what? I could try that. And I think
Right.
even to your point about being authentic, that's why I try, even on my page here, I love to read. So
Mhm.
if I could form a big book club, I'm telling you, every client, if I can, they're getting them to read. Pick up and read for fun. Like
Yes.
there's so many different things you could read, and just it could be whatever. But that's
Right.
my thing. And so I share that too, because I want you to know that, like, again, all the things are always gonna be the things. There's always gonna be something.
Right.
And then but there can also always be something fun,
Yeah.
something lighter, because we're not just heaviness all the
Hmm.
time.
Right. We're not just strength and resilience. We are also joy and rest and safety. And joy can be the act of resilience, right? So, like,
Yeah.
they want us to be mad and angry and upset and stressed out with heart disease. And, and but we could also be joyful. And that
Yeah.
also is an act of resistance. So, like, you kind of like saying that just really grounded, like, where we even started at this conversation, which is the
Mhm.
theme, right, of
Yeah.
Black Maternal Health Week, which is being rooted in justice and joy,
Enjoy.
and remembering that. Anything else that you think that you want to like kind of say for our moms? Maybe like your best advice or something that's coming up from you and from a last session with a mom.
Yeah, the last thing I was just thinking, kind of along the lines of what we're talking now, is along the lines of joy. I do fully recognize that a lot of moms, might not have support, and, they have their kids all the time. And so I always tell them, you know, there's also joy in parenting. You can have fun with your children. You can raise them in a way that they have healthy independence, that you could be doing your thing and they could
Hmm.
be doing their thing. I had such a great time during the pandemic teaching my son how to cook. I taught him how to make Shirley temples, and we
Hmm.
played cards and different things. And so, like, sometimes I do want you to get your individual time. And I also, if the kids, have fun with the kids. You can
Yes.
have fun sometimes. Everything doesn't have
Hmm.
to be so serious. And I think
Right.
if we can, that will not only deepen our relationships with them, but if we put that time in, when it's my time to go read, my son is not bothering me
That
because
part.
we've had our time, and he
Hmm.
knows now you go do your thing and I'm going to go do my thing. So if I had to say anything, is not to wait until you have this perfect village or the perfect time. Pull out that coloring book while your kid is coloring and just take a deep breath. Because we're
Yes.
also modeling for them how to care and take care of themselves as well.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Everything you said, I'm like plus plus everything. I think we have to raise them to be adults and to be individuals, and that starts
Mhm.
with modeling.
Yeah.
And you taking care of yourself shows them how to take care of themselves because they
Mhm.
are always watching.
Yeah.
So yes, that's so. I think that's so valuable as a great like sticking and landing point.
Mhm.
What about how moms in New Jersey or any of the other states that you all service can get connected with you and work with you?
Yeah, sure. So right here on Instagram, you can go in our bio, and I think it might even say get support or reminders. You can sign up for our newsletter. If you're interested in therapy, it does say get therapy on there somewhere, but we're therapyforblackmoms.com, black spelled BLK, and we'll be excited to engage with you. Like I said, we do our newsletter every now and then. We do events and things. We have products there are people that engage with us from California that can't really come to therapy, but like some of the work that we do. So I always encourage people to sign up for the newsletter. You can find out what we're talking about. If we've got new blogs with tips, especially Mother's Day is coming up. And so, yeah, I would love to connect with you all that way.
Yes. All right. So if you are in those areas, um, go ahead and hit those up and follow us for this week because we're having more conversations about Black maternal mental health. Thank you so much, Barbara, for having this conversation
Yes.
with me.
You're so
And
welcome.
I'm so glad that we met. We're close, right? So we are going to be in community. If you start that book club, let me know because
Yes.
I will be signed up. Okay.
Yes.
I'm in Jersey too, so if it's in person, I will be there. But thank you
Okay.
again. Thank you.
Yes,
Good
and thank
night.
you for having me. Have a
Of
good night,
course.
everyone. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye
Bye.
bye.